My name is Pat Cousins, and this is an analysis I've done of the game Wordle, which just had its 600th puzzle today. And just on the off chance this might be interesting or useful to other people. So yeah, it was announced that today, February 9th, 2023, is puzzle number 600. However, I did see on some online sites there was a word 0. So I think there have actually been 601 Wordle puzzles. It is funny that, so there's word 0, cigar. I do think it's funny that the word sissy was used, which I don't think they would use now that it's owned by the New York Times. And I think we're all glad that they're not using words like humph anymore. There would be an uprising, I think, if they used that. I really don't have a problem with too many of the words they've used, although I didn't like matey, which was used a couple of weeks ago. I think that's a little bit slangy. Anyway, I've been playing, it says I've played 400 puzzles, and my stats I think are pretty good. Now it's rounding up to say I've won 100%. I had a streak that went longer than a year, and then one unfortunate morning, I don't know what I did. I don't want to talk about it. I made not even a rookie error. I don't think a rookie would even make this error, but I messed up and broke my streak. But I did get a 2 today on puzzle number 600 or 601, so I was happy with that. So the words that after I was playing for a while I settled on as my starter words were irate, mound, and then sylph if I needed to. But usually from the first two words I would get enough matches that I could make guesses based on those. A sylph, I think, is one of those woodland nymphs or fairies. Yeah, it's a useful word just to try and match some letters. But I decided to take a more scientific approach, so I took all 601 answers that we've had so far, put them in a spreadsheet, and then began to do analysis by letter. Now, one thing I did notice, I was a little surprised. I knew that they like to repeat letters within words, but I was amazed it's been 31% of the solutions have had a letter repeated twice. And there have been 4 puzzles that have a letter repeated 3 times, the aforementioned sissy, error, fluff, and mummy. But what I was really interested in is how many times each letter has been used. The first count, total count, just says how many of that letter has occurred, but that does double count when a letter is repeated within a word. So the next count is how many words have used one or more of that letter, and I think that's more useful. So on the next slide here, I have the total. So E has been used the most, 46%. So almost half of the puzzles have had an E. Then A, R, a third of them have had a T, O, I, L, and then S and N have been used more than a fifth of the time. But my other insight, I suppose, having played Wordle for over a year, is that obviously a green is better than a yellow, but it's a lot better. I would say more than 2 times as useful to know exactly where the letter occurs. And so I went back and I also added this heat map that shows where the letter most occurs within words. And we can see for the E's, far and away, E has occurred at the end of a word. I mean, that's incredible, 120, which is 1/5, again, of all the words that Wordle has used have ended in an E. Otherwise, E will occur in the fourth position, or then second and then third, not so often in the first position. A is usually second or third place, R usually in the second, then maybe towards the end, fourth or fifth. T is usually at the end, but it may be the first or the fourth. O, similar to the A, is usually in second or third position. It just doesn't begin words as often as A does. And I, we can see, is usually in the third position. I just want to point out how many of the words have begun with an S, 82 out of the 601. So S is far and away, when it occurs, most likely to be at the beginning of the word. And C is really punching above its weight. There aren't a lot of C's, but when they do occur, often at the beginning. In fact, you can see that C starts the word more often than any other letter except for S. And the other one I want to point out, the anomaly, is how often words end with a Y. So, in fact, more often than a word begins with an S, it's going to end in a Y. So with these scores of how often a letter is used in words, and then this positional score, I tried some words that, as far as I know, have not been used in Wordle before, and try and gave them some kind of score. So I have a total where there's no weight. Now I am adding a percentage to a positional score, so I'm adding apples and oranges. So I think there is a little bit of weighting inherent in that. But then I really like getting the position right a lot more, so I doubled that positional score, added it to the percentage score of how often those letters occur in words, and we see this ranked list here. And so from this list, I've been creating pairs of words that I think are good to start with. Irate and sound, so very similar to the irate mound I was using before. That's the best one I can come up with. Maybe you can come up with a better one. Arise and touch. Noisy alert. Arose unity. There's my irate mound. Quite high scoring. And a noise vault, which wouldn't be a bad name for a band. So overall, my tips are, maybe I should better say, this is how I'm playing the game today, is I try to start with a high-scoring word that has never been used before. Now that might be a little bit controversial. I am looking at this list I have, and there are lists online that you can find easily that show which words have been used in Wordle. I don't think that's cheating. If you think that is either cheating or maybe just not what you would do, please let me know. I welcome all comments. I also try, of course, to start with a word without repeated letters. If you use a word with some letter repeated, then you're only trying 4 letters on your first guess instead of 5. And obviously that's not a great idea. And the other thing is I try to zig after they have zagged. So I try to use a word that is as unlike yesterday's word as possible. Although recently that hasn't been very helpful because they have repeated words with the same initial letter or the same vowels as the previous days, but just something to be aware of. And then if I get very few or no matches from any of those 5 letters, I try another high-scoring unused word. Obviously, if I match on letters, that's going to change my strategy as I go forward. And one other point on this unused word business, up to now, both the original creator of Wordle, Josh Wardle, and the New York Times have never repeated a word. That I'm sure that will change in the future. And actually, I think it may not be a bad idea for them to do that. But for now, I am checking if a word has already been used and then trying a different word. I've noticed people using obscure words or plurals, and in fact, I've done that myself. For a while, I was starting with the word soar, S-O-A-R-E, which I can't even remember what it means now. Obviously, a very obscure word. But I've decided right now I'm trying to hopefully someday get Wordle in 1. That's my dream. And so it's never going to be an obscure word. So better to try a common word or fairly common word. And the same with plurals. The answer is never going to be a plural word or a plural verb. However, there are times where you're desperately trying to find letters that are in the solution, and the only word you can think of to try is one that ends in S. Of course, consider that there's a very good chance the word will have repeated letters. That still trips me up. Recently, there was one where I figured out that it must end with blank I-N-T-H. And I'm looking at all of the letters that are left that I haven't guessed, and I cannot think of anything that ends in I-N-T-H until finally I consider that, oh, maybe they're repeating the N, and of course the solution was ninth. And then my final piece of advice for Wordle players is don't go chasing waterfalls, by which I mean where you get so excited that you've matched on one letter, maybe another one, and you really have a good feeling in your bones about what the answer is going to be. And so you put in, oh, you think the A is going to be in the first position, you try alive, well, at least you match the L. And so now you're reckoning it's something LA, something E, and you have a very good feeling it's going to be plate. No, so you try another LAE word, flare, no, try glade, and then before you know it, you're down to your last guess. You try blame, and you're out of luck. Instead, not that I would maybe recommend dance as a starter word, but if you started with dance, well, we don't have to repeat the E until we go to make our final guess. We know where E is. We can forget about that. It would be nice to know where the A is, of course. And so we might think in our mind, or even on a piece of paper, maybe the A is at the beginning, and it's A something 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 E. And if it is, maybe there's another vowel in the third position. Or maybe it's A followed by a bunch of consonants. Well, it can't be ankle or angle, but maybe it's something like ample. Then again, it may be something something A something E. And you should know that in English, that's a very common pattern. And so there could be a lot of words that are going to match that. So it would be good to guess some letters with the A, again in a different position to try and narrow down where the A is. And of course, you should know what the most common letters are in the Wordle solutions. So maybe instead you would try something like trail, and now we know where the A is. And we have this additional L, we just don't know where it's going to be. We might think it's something LA, something E, and again, there are a lot of possibilities. BL, A, FLA, so on. Whereas if it's ALE, right now I can only think of shale or whale. If you can think of any other possible solutions with ALE that don't use the letters that have been eliminated, then let me know down below. But wouldn't it be nice to work out where the L is? Again, now we don't have to bother about the A as well as the E. And how many of these other letters like G, P, B, F, S, even the H, can we try? Well, these letters don't really go together very well in five-letter words, but maybe we know the word glyph, which actually was a Wordle solution at one point. But again, maybe because we're trying to identify letters, we're going to go with glyph. And at least it has told us where the L is, and it has eliminated the G, P, and the H. We probably don't care too much about the Y. We didn't really think there was going to be a Y in this word. Now we can think about the possibilities. So with a B at the beginning, I can think of blame or blaze. With an F, flame or flake. And then with an S, slake or slave. Well, they're probably not going to use slave in the New York Times list. Slake might be slightly obscure, to slake your thirst. But think about the order we might try these. Again, we might try combining some of these letters in one word to try and identify which ones are being used. And then if we did that in guess 4, we should be able to comfortably come up with the answer in guess 5. But I think of it in terms of a decision tree, that if I can try the right word that will confirm or eliminate the most possible solutions, then that's the best way to go. If I started with blaze and I didn't match any letters, then I'm only eliminating 2 words. Obviously, if I match the B, then I know it's going to be blame. Whereas if I try flame and I don't match anything, then not only am I eliminating flame and flake, but I'm also eliminating blame. And now I'm leaving myself maybe 2 possibilities, blaze or slake. So I should be able to get this in 6. So I'm going to go with flame. Sure enough, neither F nor M are in it. So worst case scenario, I go slake. Don't match anything, but then I'm able to solve within 6 guesses with blaze. All right, those are my findings, having looked at all of 601 Wordle words so far. Do you have any thoughts on what I've shown? Any comments, any tips or tricks that you follow? Please let me know down below, and thanks for watching.